There's going to be like a lot of Detroiters, a lot of people that live in Detroit, and they are going to be annoyed with us. I mean, they might be, I don't know, they might be annoyed with me. I don't know what the outcome was going to be. We used to live in Detroit. We were born in Detroit, and quite honestly, she has no issue with it, but I don't necessarily go around telling people that I was born in Detroit because of my experiences in Detroit. Not all of it was bad, but I had a lot of trauma, drama, some of everything in the city. But we're going to talk about why we left Detroit, Michigan and moved to Los Angeles, California. And also with that, we're going to talk about the Michael Jackson deal, the so-called Michael Jackson deal. We're going to get into a lot of stuff. Welcome to the podcast with Todd and Tasha in the city of Los Angeles.
Obviously.
We have a great show. I know we have a great show because all of our shows are great, no matter what anyone else may think or say, positive speaking. So we're going to get right into it. First, just want to say thank you for the ones who've been hanging with Tasha and I strong for the past umpteen years. That may be another story that we'll get into as well, because this technically isn't our first channel. We had like a channel umpteen years ago.
Right.
So let's get started. Now, there was a time when I was really in love with Detroit. No one could say anything bad about Detroit at all. And when someone did say something bad about Detroit, I was so offended and felt just some type of way. And that's how maybe some Detroiters may feel watching this.
Yeah, I'm sure that they do.
Right.
Well, I think that goes to the loyalty. Like, if you're in Detroit or diehard Detroit, you're super loyal no matter what.
Yes. I was like very loyal.
Yeah.
And everywhere I went, which really wasn't too many places at the time, maybe the suburban city, the suburbs, I just was always talking about Detroit. Detroit this, Detroit that. Oh, yeah, I love Detroit. Detroit is my favorite city. It's the best city in the world. All of this stuff I was just screaming. So, growing up, I had a lot of fun, but then I had like a lot of drama and trauma and things like that. So I'm not going to get really into all of that, but I'm just going to fast forward a whole lot of years. Whew. Okay, so I was really counting on Detroit to really be a world-class city. Now, of course, Detroit is known for Motown and Motor City, all of the above. I will always hear people just bragging about other cities, but in the same breath, I'm over here across the street bragging about Detroit. But that, after a while, started quickly declining in terms of how excited and flabbergasted I was about Detroit. I started really noticing things that just was not right. So I'm going to take you back to the time when we had a mayor. And we had a mayor named Dennis Archer. Dennis Archer, I thought, was going to be a real cool mayor, a black guy. I'm thinking, okay, this guy is going to be real straight for the city. He's going to really do this and do X, Y, and Z. Now, I'm not saying that he didn't do anything for the city. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying, where it counted, I think he
majorly dropped the ball.
Flipped on us. Yeah, dropped the ball. So he was the mayor, and he was getting things done, fixing up a place called Campus Marshes, trying to get that going. A whole lot of things he was trying to get going. Well, it seemed like a whole lot of things compared to us not having a lot of things, period. I'm telling you. So there was a situation where it really was going to count, where finally Detroit was going to be on a map. The city of Detroit was like the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions always had a losing season. One season they may be 0-16. Another season may be 1-15. Another season they may be 3-14, so forth. 0-16 back. That's how the city was.
Yeah.
Oftentimes. So this was a situation where Detroit was going to be building 3 casinos. Mm-hmm. And I believe one of them was called Motor City Casino. Another, I guess, was going to be called MGM Casino. I forget what the other one was called. Not that it really matters. There were 3 people up to get licenses that applied to get license for these casinos. So guess who was giving out the license? Who was choosing who was going to get the license? That was Mayor Archer at the time. Now this is again where I started feeling in my spirit that Detroit was just really gonna decline that much more. One of the people that was going to one of the people that applied for the license was a guy by the name of Don Barden. Mm-hmm. So he was a big shot, a millionaire. And he teamed up with the one and only Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
From the Jackson 5. And of course, you all know he went solo and he had Beat It, Thriller, all these songs, just Beat It, Billie Jean's Not My Lover, some everything. I don't have to go through the whole list, through the history of it.
Man in the Mirror.
Yeah, Girl in the Mirror. I mean, Man in the Mirror. So anyway, let me speed this up. So he teamed up with, Don Barden teamed up with Michael Jackson. So they were doing press conferences, everything. I'm like, wow, Don Barden, he is teaming up with Michael Jackson. I mean, Don Barden is serious. Detroit must be serious. Michael Jackson flew into town from the Neverland Ranch. Okay, Michael Jackson, he stopped playing with his giraffes. He stopped playing with his animals. He stopped playing with his monkeys. He even stopped playing with his dinosaurs to come over to hang in Detroit with Don Barden. So they did a newscast, a press conference. Mm-hmm. So Don Barden said that, Mayor Archer, if you give me the license, I'm going to partner up with Michael Jackson. I'm going to team up with Michael Jackson. And Michael Jackson basically said, and this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to build in the city on Belle Isle. Mm-hmm. So Michael Jackson, Don Barden, they revealed the big draft, the drawing, the sketch. This big, huge indoor amusement park. Mm-hmm. This sucker was huge. Yeah. This thing was going to be the biggest indoor amusement park in the whole nation, in the whole country.
Right.
Everybody was excited. Detroit was excited, like, wow, Michael Jackson, yes. As long as we have him here on the map, Detroit is really going to be on the map. Detroit's going to take off like a rocket. So finally, the day has come to where Mayor Archer was going to grant the licenses to 3 people. Now, actually, I believe it was more than 3 people applied. Yes, actually it was.
Yeah.
It was way more. Please forgive me. But again, one of the people was Michael Jackson, Don Barden. Was Don Barden, but Don Barden just partnered up with Michael Jackson. Mm-hmm. So the moment of truth came. So he granted these different people license to run a casino, to build a casino. So now everybody was anticipating. Everyone knew that Mayor Archer was going to select Don Barden and Michael Jackson. What did Mayor Archer do? He denied Don Barden and Michael Jackson.
Oh my God.
People in Detroit was like, what? You are going to deny Michael Jackson? Are you serious? What is wrong with you, Archer? Dennis Archer. What is wrong with you? Did you wake up on the wrong side of the bed? Did you wake up under the bed? Did you wake up like on the floor?
Right.
Did you wake up with smelly feet?
It was so heartbreaking because, of course, at the time I was much younger, obviously. And here's the thing. Detroit... That's how I feel. When I think of Detroit, I just have to shake my head because so much potential is just so wasted. And now, okay, people watching from Detroit, I know what you're going to say. Oh, but Detroit is quote unquote back. Downtown is better. It's back and it's booming and this, that, and the other. But the thing of it is, outside of downtown, it's still lacking. And with the issue as far as back then, it would have added to actually have something to do, substantial to do in the city. That was a thing, even the youth and whatnot, obviously youth and adults alike, there was such a lack of things to do. It contributes to a whole lot of stuff in terms of, crime. So
Exactly.
It was such a bummer.
So to move forward with this, so after Archer was out, then comes a guy by the name of Kwame Kilpatrick. Mm-hmm. So he was a young guy, vibrant. He had an amazing smile, amazing personality. He was likable. Everybody liked the guy.
He went to Cass.
Some people loved him. He just like really had it going on. Real cool guy, everything. And we all just had like hope.
High
hopes for this guy. High hopes.
Yeah.
Because everyone loved him. So yet and still, he just became a baller and a shot caller. So the guy was basically running the city like a drug kingpin.
Yeah.
He had chicks. There were parties. Keep in mind, he was married.
Right.
Parties, all sorts of things. He had a big entourage, a police entourage, all of that. I mean, he was just everywhere, just calling shots. He was like hiring just people, his friends and pals and family members to work for him. He was just hiring any and everybody and paying them to do nothing.
Right.
Okay. I mean, literally paying them to do nothing. And then he started getting a really big head, and so it was just like a lot of scheming and scamming going on, a lot of messed up contracts where money was exchanged hands illegally. It's just a whole lot of stuff. It's just too much to get into, too much technical stuff. But it's just a whole lot of stuff was going on that just was not right at all. And so then eventually something happened to where it was this rumored party at the mayor's mansion where there was a stripper by the name of Tamara Green. Mm-hmm. So you guys probably all already know that story. Her nickname was Strawberry. So she reportedly, allegedly danced at this mansion, at this big party. So, and they had police escorts and guards all outside. But then a lot of police officers were inside because they were getting basically lap dances and things like that too. So they were all partying, having a good old time. And apparently the rumor was that a fight broke out. So not sure really exactly what happened. I don't know if the mayor was just getting too many lap dances, but apparently the wife showed up and there was a fight. I guess she apparently, supposedly, again, allegedly, I should say, beat the crap out of the stripper or whatever. So later on, for some odd reason, you guys already know the story. I don't remember just the whole thing, but for some odd reason, they end up finding her dead. So, yeah, so that wasn't too cool at all. And so it's been a mystery, okay, who Kate, this young lady, this 20-some-year-old young lady.
Up until this day.
They don't even know, up until this day, they don't know who did, well, they say they don't know who did it. So it was just like things like that. The city just basically was just another embarrassment due to things like that. And the mayor ended up getting in trouble, ended up going to prison, and just a whole lot of stuff. So then again, I started really realizing that Detroit wasn't what I thought it was. So I was like traveling. That's around the time I was traveling as well too. And I kept hearing people talk about Chicago is this and that. Chicago is nice. And I'm like, I don't care about no Chicago. Michael Jordan. I don't like Michael Jordan. I don't like Chicago. It's all about Detroit. It's all about Detroit Pistons. Yeah, Detroit this and that and everything else. So I went to do my first show. I got on the airplane and I arrived in the city of Chicago, stayed on Michigan Avenue, what they call the Magnificent Mile. And when I went to Chicago for the first time, it suddenly hit me that Detroit is crap. You can get mad at me all day long, but Detroit was just a piece of crap. I was in Chicago and I was like, wow, this is a real city. They're steadily building these skyscrapers, buildings. The Magnificent Mile, Michigan Avenue, is just restaurants all up and down, stores, shops. It's just vibrant. It's vibing. People are just up and down, just having a good time. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I didn't even want to go back home after that. And I was so disappointed. So then when I went back to Detroit, I was like complaining. I was asking questions.
Yeah.
My questions were, why isn't Detroit as big as Chicago? Why doesn't Detroit have a Michigan Avenue type of strip where they have shops and stores and restaurants? Why isn't Detroit vibrant? Why is Detroit so boring? Detroit is not vibrant, but yet Detroit is violent.
Right.
And that really bothered me, and I was so disappointed. So then I ended up I was going back and forth to Chicago a bunch of times. I love Chicago. Then I went to New York City. I went to Manhattan, and I was like, oh my goodness, look at this city.
Yeah.
But what's wrong with Detroit? I started comparing, and I was like, man, all these years I've been living in the city of Detroit,
Thinking it was the bomb.
and it's totally boring.
And again, so here's the takeaway so far is, number one, poor leadership. Okay, at the top, all the way down, it was just poor leadership in the city. Number two, total lack of things to do outside of like the little handful of things that they may have now. No offense about it, but I'm just saying, like, compared to other major cities, there's just not a lot to do in Detroit. And that was the issue in terms of, even for me, when you're inside of a box, like, let's just be honest, if you're inside of a box or something like that, how in the world are you gonna be like, oh, this is the best box ever? You know what I'm saying? Like, everything is in here, this is great, blah, blah, blah. You've never been outside. You've never been outside the box. You've never been seeing any other boxes or whatever the case may be. But you're inside of here thinking that it's just the best thing ever. And then for some reason you get a chance to go outside and you're just like, wait a minute. What's this? Wait, they can do that over here? Huh? There's another box, or there's, a silly example, but it's so true. Like, I feel like people in Detroit, again, speaking from experience, literally was in a box. And it was just like, you think that it's just all the bomb until you go out and see other cities that are well established. They may or may not be quote unquote well run. I mean, no government is perfect, but the bottom line is they had a vision for their cities and they stuck to those visions and made sure that things came into fruition. Something I was totally, absolutely lacking as far as Detroit. And it was like, where is the vision? Where is the big vision for the city? Where is the big vision for, come on, the riverfront right across from Canada, the opportunity that was there. It was like, we never saw them actually come up with some major grand plan that was gonna like revitalize the city. And I know that they talk about the riots, they meaning people who have, wrote about it and things like that. talk about, oh, the riots just devastated Detroit. But I mean, that was so long ago.
Right.
And there's no reason, or I should say, there's no logical reason why just because a city experiences a riot, one riot, a big one, that decades later it's still in a state of disarray and shambles.
And then traveling outside the city in terms of going to the suburbs, I dealt with like a lot of racism there.
Oh, so
that
bad.
wasn't cool. Of course, obviously there's racism all over the country. It's like old news, but I ran into like a lot of racism just right outside the city. And the other thing that really bothered me was that, quite frankly, I had a harder time dealing with my own people than racism. I'm just being honest. I had so many of our own people just literally rip me apart. I mean, some of everything. I had way more bad experiences with black folk than, white folks, to be perfectly honest. And I remember I was homeless. I ended up homeless actually in Detroit, and it was in the dead of winter time. And I went to the payphone to call to try to get somebody to help me. And I was just at like a super low time in my life. So I went to the payphone, and I was in the process of calling for help. And while I was at the payphone, I got robbed. So then I went in the gas station after I got robbed, and I was trying to get help. And so someone called the police or whatever. So the Detroit narcotics unit came, and they found me, and they had me to get in the back of the car. And it was two in the front. It was me in the back. Us three, we went to look for the person that robbed me. And so when the police found the suspect, they was like, okay, that's the one, right? Is that the one? I was like, yeah, that's the one that robbed me. They got out right in front of me. They took the guy and they slammed him a bunch of times on the ground. So they gave it to him pretty good. So, this black guy that robbed me, they gave it to him really good. So gave me my wallet and stuff back too. But anyway.
Wow.
So again, I was homeless in the dead of winter time. I was freezing my butt off. I mean, I was like sleeping at the airport. I was sleeping everywhere you can think of, in buildings, all that. I was just like at a low. The people that I had in my circle, I didn't really realize it. Well, one person I did, but okay. So one of the people that was in my circle, and I'm not gonna really get into much detail with this, but they did like some things to me that just wasn't cool, whatever. And I thought these people were my friends, but didn't really realize that they really weren't my friends. But just fighting the fact that these people really weren't legit. And so from like 1997 to like really 2000 was just really probably the most trying time of my life. I'm not going to get into that either because it's like very personal. Might do a video about it once, but one of these days. But yeah, so something very personal happened starting from the year 1997 all the way to 2000, to where I literally thought that this trauma that happened, and the trauma that happened, it might as well be a death. That's how bad it was. But that I had to like literally try to cut myself off from this situation that happened, because if I didn't, I really believe I was going to end up losing my mind. But anyway, I was homeless. My mother was the only one praying for me. So that was like just really a really messed up situation in Detroit. And like everyone turned their back on me, all that stuff. And just, family, friends, it's all of it. Just literally turned their back on me. And so it just basically, I turned into a world, and I was just kind of doing some everything. So anyway, I went to New York, and then later I got a phone call, kind of find out I was going to go to California. And I'm like, yeah, I'm excited. You know, I'm going to go to California, go to Los Angeles. So I flew out to Los Angeles, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. I'm hanging out on Sunset Strip, Sunset Boulevard, everywhere. I was just having a good old time. So then ended up going back to Detroit, and it was just so depressing every time I went back to Detroit because I was having fun, and then going back to Detroit, and it was just like so boring. And then you have. So this is where it really gets just like really jacked up is that, so I was staying with some people in a house, right, on the street called Wyoming. And so the people that I was staying with, they decided to go out and party, have a good old time. And while I was there, I fell asleep. It was dark. And the only reason I woke up because I heard glass shatter. I'm like, oh my goodness, what in the world? I knew it wasn't a bird. So I heard the glass break, and I'm like, oh my goodness, somebody is breaking into the house. Somebody was literally breaking into the house. Okay, this is crazy. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna have to defend myself because I don't know what's gonna happen. This might be my last go around. Went to get the 12 gauge shotgun. So I can get a good aim and do what I need to do. The problem is that the day before, the people I was staying with, they took the shotgun out to a park somewhere and were just firing off rounds. So then when I needed to use it, just so happened the next day, it was empty.
Oh my gosh.
Boy, I tell you. So anyway, so we had so many bad experiences. Homes were always on fire, catching fire. Houses were being knocked down because it was just so jacked up. It looked like Beirut over there. It was like really, really bad. Bad relationships, all the type of it was just like really crazy. I mean, the bad relationships really don't have anything to do with it, but I'm just kind of venting right now. So, but her experiences, I guess, was golden.
No, it's not that it was golden. It was just, again, being inside that box. And really, of course, my eyes open up as well. Because, of course, you end up going other places. You end up getting outside of the construct of the city. Now, the thing is, we have been to Canada, but, of course, everybody in Detroit pretty much
that's where my family lives. I mean,
right.
Canadian, so.
So, but pretty much everybody out in Detroit, I mean, that's what you did. You went across the bridge to Canada. You went to the casino. You went to other places or whatever. You even ventured off to Toronto, maybe. But in terms of like actually looking at a city like Chicago, New York, LA, things like that, heck, even Ohio, I mean, well, that's a state, but you know what I'm saying. But anyway, what is it, Cleveland? They have a nice downtown? I can't remember. But anyway, bottom line is going outside of Detroit and actually looking at it in terms of like, hold on a second, right over here, like this is what's going on. For me, it was Chicago. Now, I had a friend who we were in college. She was like, oh yeah, I've never been to Detroit. She's from Chicago. And she was like, oh, I've never been to Detroit. So, by the way, the school was obviously like hours away from Detroit. It was college, but it was still in Michigan. Just hours away from Detroit. She, long story short, came with me home. And I'm thinking like, oh, I'm going to just show her a night on the town in Detroit, as college ladies or whatever the case. And she was so taken aback by how empty it was. This was a weekend. And so I'm like, all right, so let's go, girl. We're going to go downtown and blah, blah. And she was like, where are all the people at? And I'm thinking to myself, like, there's people out there. There are people out here. But no. And so I was and then I'm like, what does she mean? And she was like, so what is there to do? She was like, where's like she was like naming like different things. She's like, where's like the entertainment? Where's this, that, and the other? And I was just like, I mean, we have Greektown. It's like Greektown, which is like, you literally can walk and it's like, what, 1 or 2
because
blocks?
It's so small.
It's so
you can literally
small.
Walk around the whole downtown.
And we have. And it's just
like 50 times and not
right.
get tired. I mean, well, you get tired of
the
in the
same
same spot, the
thing.
same thing. Yeah.
I mean, I even lived downtown Detroit before, as far as that, and I mean, both of us kind of did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, it was just the thing of it is that, okay, yeah, there are some aspects of it that you can see from downtown Detroit of old, like the trolley system. That was great, which, of course, unfortunately was no longer in operation, is no longer in operation. And other things that historically, like, wow, it was something once upon a time. But again, it was just like, okay, then what? Like, what is there to do? So we went to Chicago. We drove there, and he was like, Tasha, we're going to go to Chicago. I'm like, okay, whatever. I get to Chicago. We're pulling up, like through the whatever toll or something like that. And I was so blown away because I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's beautiful. Like, look at these buildings, and you see all these people out. And I'm just like, no wonder she was like, where are all the people? You see all these people out, and they're walking up and down. Like, they're walking. Okay, that's another thing. It's very walkable in Chicago, not so in Detroit. They're walking up and down Michigan Avenue. They're walking on the pier. They're walking downtown. And they're just shopping, they're eating, they're going to the pier, they're going to this place and that place. The time that we went, the jazz festival was there. And it was just a completely different experience. And I was just so mad. I'm there, and I, of course, thought about Detroit. And I was just like, we're supposed to be like, this is how we're supposed to be in Detroit. We have the freaking river. We're right across from Canada. Like, we have a huge massive expanse of water that we can be actually utilizing for something other than whatever is being utilized for, which was seemingly nothing. The Renaissance Center, okay, this stuff closed at 1:00. It was just so ridiculous. So
They just didn't have enough stuff to do.
It was not enough to do.
I was just, yeah.
It was just not enough
Then,
to
like,
do.
the winters was just too cold.
Yeah.
At the gas station trying to pump gas, and you're frozen, or trying to get up in the morning to go unlock your car door, and the lock is frozen.
Oh, yeah.
It just was like a whole lot of stuff. But go ahead.
I was going to say, for me, the main thing, too, was obviously then we had a son. And we had to think about, okay, literally, like, what is his future going to be
Right.
like in the city? Because we saw it often, way too many times, people who just, not all, but a lot of times in the neighborhoods that we were in or exposed to, is like, if you stay there, you do nothing. You know what I'm saying?
Right, exactly.
It was just like no future, it seemed.
So let's get to how we end up moving to Los Angeles. So originally we were talking about moving to Texas, and I didn't know at the time, we were talking about moving to Houston, but I didn't know at the time that Tasha really wasn't, with that. So we definitely weren't on the same page about that. So I was excited, and I was getting like a lot of brochures about Houston, Texas, and planning to move there. And I will always go to bed and have dreams that this is the crazy part. So I will always go to sleep and have all these dreams about moving to Houston, Texas. Mm-hmm. But for whatever reason, I would never see Houston. It would just be like black. As weird as that sounds, like black. Okay, so another dreams, but I don't really see it. But one day I went to bed, and this is a true story, truth before God. So when we lived in Detroit, we had a house, and we had a deck in the back of our house. This big deck was like really nice, and the garage was right there. You can see all the trees, and then the other houses behind the trees.
Right.
It's real nice. But so when I went to sleep and I had this dream, I saw myself, and it was just this was just like really real. Mm-hmm. So I was standing on the same deck, but this was at nighttime, the same deck. And all the trees and the houses, the garage, all that was just like gone. And the only thing I could see that was in place of where the trees and the garage and the houses used to be, was downtown LA. And right in the middle, you can see the U.S. Bank Tower right there. It was like God is my witness, like I was literally standing right there. And so when I saw that, it was like God was saying, like, this is where you're going to be. This is where you're supposed to be. So when I woke back up, it was like no doubt in my mind. it was so strong. Something I cannot explain. I was like, okay, I told Tasha about the dream that I believe this is where God, has us to be in California. And she came alive then, she just definitely came alive and stuff. She wasn't so lively about Texas, but when I told her about the dream, she was just like,
okay, the thing about it
flying
was
on cloud number 10.
Okay, the thing of it was, of course, we had gone to Tulsa to visit family, and that really, again, opened up my eyes even more. Like, wow, like there's more to life than just Detroit.
Right.
In terms of like living and things like that. So when we got back, that was when we were like, okay, you know what? We're going to move out of Detroit. We're going to move out of Michigan. Like, we're going to do something different. And so, of course, now we thought about Houston. That was like pretty much the plan, almost solidly. It wasn't that I hated the idea. It was just like, okay, Houston, yeah, all right, let's give it it was like more like let's give it a try for me type of thing. But like Todd said, I have reservations and I didn't even know why. It was just like, okay, yeah, wow, they have this, that, and the other, whatever the case. And I was just like, okay, yeah. But all the while I was like, all right, well, let's give it a try. But when he told me about the dream, now mind you, I'd never been to California. Like at all. I'd never been on the West Coast, let alone California. And when he told me about the dream, it was just like, it clicked. It just clicked. And I was just like, okay, that's what we're doing. And I don't even know why, obviously, to this day, but except for the fact that, God's plan. And that was basically like the spark that was needed, or he pretty much knew, like, of course, God knows the desires of our heart, because he put the desires there and he gives us the desires of our heart. So even if we're like thinking of something,
right,
he'll illuminate it, like, what about this right here?
And the crazy thing is, so we stayed at the Biltmore Hotel. It was very famous, where like nice stars and stuff stayed for umpteen decades. But the crazy thing is that, so we will leave the hotel and we will go hang out in downtown, or we will go to the beach, Santa Monica, whatever. But we will always say, all right, it's time to go back home. And we kept referring to the hotel.
Yeah, I mean, the apartment. Look at me. Listen to me.
We kept referring to the hotel as our home.
Right.
Like, we literally looked at, like she was just basically saying, we just basically looked at the hotel like it was our apartment.
Yep.
That's crazy. So, I mean, and then we went to LA Live, the opening of LA Live and everything. And we just all this stuff, all this excitement. Everybody was just having a blast. And we weren't used to that in Detroit. It was just a strong vibe. Everybody was smiling, having a good time.
Definitely high vibe.
Everything like wow and stuff. So that's just basically how we end up leaving Detroit and moving to Los Angeles, California. Mm-hmm. It's just way more, but this video is already way too long. Way too long.
So to summarize, again, lack of leadership as far as in Detroit, lack of things to do. There seems to be no future as far as obviously raising kids and, building a family and things like that. Not to mention the weather factor. And, it was just like, hey, we saw a bigger picture for us outside of the city of Detroit.
Yes, we sure did. So we're happy with our move, and I mean, we just again missed out on a whole lot of stuff. So, but
I know.
Yeah, we left the drama back there. But so, guys, we appreciate you watching. Thank you so much for tuning in to the podcast. Again, Todd and Tasha. And we will be having another video ready for you as soon as possible.